Jennifer Aniston and David Schwimmer confirmed in the Friends reunion that the crush between Rachel and Ross was real in real life. And then everybody went,
"That is brand new information!"
Because the suspicions of millions of fans all over the world were confirmed. There was something about Rachel and Ross in those scenes that was more than just acting. But how do we define chemistry? What is the casting paradox? And what is the meaning of these facial expressions when they were table reading one of the most passionate scenes of the show? It's great to have you here, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas and I'm the body language guy. Let's get down to it. Do you remember this kiss? Of course you do. It was a catharsis in that instant in which they locked lips. Knowing that at that moment Jennifer and David had a huge crush on each other makes you live this scene on a whole new level. Because I could affirm that anyone that followed their paths up to this moment on the second season had the feeling that this was much more than acting. It also helps that the scene was scripted to hijack our inner tension. First they are angry and raise their voices, he goes away, she locks the door and begins to cry, he comes back with a yearning look and she stands up to open the door with a stare that is just passion. And then they kiss. If you felt this scene like an explosion, you're not alone, and if you can't explain why it was so powerful and sincere, it's not only about their crush on real life, but also the casting process. Rachel and Ross' romantic storyline was a plan from the start of the series. Those were the characters that were meant to carry the strongest sexual tension of the bunch, at least from the start. So it becomes a challenge for the producers who have to cast the appropriate actors and actresses for the roles. So first you have to pick an actor that fits the character. That's hard enough, and that's why some actors get typecasted. Like when you need someone that can drive, shoot guns and throw punches all at the same time, just call Jason Statham. Once you think you've got the actor that fits the character, you need to confirm that there is compatibility with the other actors and actresses. That's why casting for Friends was so hard, because the more characters you cast, the harder it gets for the next one to fit in the group. Oddly enough, David Schwimmer and Jennifer Aniston were the first and last ones to be cast, respectively, and that complicates things with the chemistry factor. Let's recognize the fact that the producers of the show had to cast Rachel and Ross so that Jennifer and David not only fit their characters, fit the whole group at the same time and have chemistry and romantic tension between them. And it had to be believable. That's how we get to the casting paradox of chemistry. Did Jennifer and David develop a crush on each other spontaneously, or was it the casting process that picked two very specific acting professionals that had so much chemistry with each other that falling in love was unavoidable? What's fascinating about this is that the very concept of chemistry is so hard to define. We know that a couple has chemistry exclusively from their body language. And it's not just about certain gestures or postures. It's something deeper, subconscious, that we notice a synchronization between them. The way they look at each other, the way they talk to each other, laugh, hug, touch, everything. We could say that we know it when we see it. Since casting the right actors and actresses for romantic roles is critical for the success of the story, a lot of thought and guts is put on this process by the producers. And we tend to forget that celebrities falling in love while working on a project together is absurdly common. Easiest example, Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. Sorry, Jan. Rosie Leslie and Kit Harington, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, Penelope Cruz and Javier Bardem, among others. Another example is Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Oh no, wait, I take that back. That was a terrible example. But it doesn't take away the fact that their crush began from the moment they met on set. Again, we go back to the fact that we exactly don't know if it was the casting process or working together. But that spontaneous chemistry that sparks even when cameras are not rolling is undeniable powerful, not only for on-screen performance but to spark a real romantic bond. But if this phenomenon is so common, why has everyone gone crazy with the fact that Jennifer and David had a crush on each other while acting? Because there's also really sad platonic romances like Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock in the set of Speed. They had this huge crush on each other but never said anything until years later on The Ellen Show. Yes, one of those what if moments. And these kind of reveals are shocking because they confirm what most fans suspect from the very moment they start following a fictional romance. And the fact that Friends is not a movie, but a series, it lets characters develop, grow, and we become more and more invested in them. Adding fuel to the fire is the fact that Friends characters were designed to be easy to identify with. I mentioned that on my Friends reunion analysis, that more than 90% of the population would have no problem in picking a character like their own. That reveal of something hidden and mysterious is why David and Jen's real-life crush sent waves worldwide. As I mentioned earlier, we spot this chemistry through body language in a subconscious way. And I have to give you a word of warning. These are not flirting signals. One couple can have chemistry without flirting with each other. Now, if this is a subconscious process, if this is your intuition at work that tells you, wow, these two persons have so much chemistry with each other and I can't, for the life of me, define how do I know it, the best tip that I can give you to refine your observation of chemistry is to pay attention to reactions. When you're hanging out with just one of them and the other appears, watch this person's face and body when it happens. Learn to spot those reactions with the corner of your eye. When one of them talks, how does the other listen? Looks at them, reacts. You're not gonna find and don't need a catalog of gestures and postures for this. It's better if you just focus on spotting those reactions. With practice, you'll start to pick up patterns in couples that have chemistry versus couples that simply don't have it. Now, if this can happen only by working together, what are the odds that it could happen to you with a colleague at work? And this is where we understand that close proximity, sharing the same space day in and day out, is not enough to fall in love. Sometimes it helps a lot, that's no doubt, because you have a lot of opportunities to get to know each other. Also, it's not uncommon in the workplace that two people learn to watch each other's back, so that's a first step towards a closer bond. There's also the factor of admiration. Showing your skills, creativity, leadership skills is a good spark for a deeper feeling. Adding fuel to the fire is overcoming stressful situations together, like impossible deadlines and horrible bosses. Just like the stress of acting, that's fertile soil for romance, just to release stress together. But still, there is never a guarantee because the hiring process of your workplace was not based on chemistry. Maybe teamwork and other skills were involved, but not chemistry. And digging deeper in that surviving together phenomenon of two people falling in love while working together, the odds of falling in love are directly proportional to the stress plus cooperation. The more stress and danger and obstacles and the more they rely on cooperation to overcome them, the higher the odds of that romantic fire to start. By the way, that's a trope we see over and over again in movies and literature. A man and a woman that don't like each other and maybe even she despises him, but like the Chicago Sun, after all they've been through, overcoming together dangers, obstacles, and impossible villains, they end up making out and the romance begins. No, it's not that far-fetched. In fact, working in show business with all the stress and demand to perform always top-notch in front of the cameras, that's the perfect setting. You have the chemistry from the casting, you've got the working together, you've got the fighting stress together. It would be unusual to not fall in love in those circumstances. Now, in the Friends reunion special, Jennifer and David did a table read, and that is exactly as it sounds, rehearsing the script around a table, and of course, it was really good to pull those nostalgia strings, but at the same time, it was a bit of a disappointment. I mean, it's great that they didn't even intend to mimic or play the same scene again, because that scene will be impossible to reproduce. It's just reading the script and trying to do the matching facial expressions. But there is one moment right at the end of reading that script where this happens. David makes this expression, and I would say that he's recalling that feeling. He's living again that experience, and that feeling is strong enough for him to show sadness. That is very different from the emotion that Ross showed in the original scene. But what about Jennifer and Rachel? She is feeling the same strong emotion, strong nostalgia, going through those years, those experiences, those feelings again. And you can see that up to this point, her eyebrows have been relaxed, but now they are pressing together. That's real sadness, that's a real emotion. Rachel and Ross' love story, both on screen and in real life, is a great example of how our intuition tells us that there is something else, hidden, that our rational mind cannot explain. A lot of people will say, hey, this is all for the publicity, they're just acting, and the producers just told them to say that they had a crush so the reunion special could have more money. And I agree that the business of show business is about fictional characters with made-up storylines in carefully crafted productions to induce the greatest emotional reaction possible in us. And that's how the industry makes money. But in the end, and until artificial intelligence and deepfakes take over acting, we will still be looking at human beings, and true emotions always show up, especially if they help the actors and actresses go with the flow of their characters. Even better is the fact that it will help you and me practice our observational skills while we binge watch our favorite series. I've got more videos that explore those crossroads between body language and show business. There's also my 100 body language tips that you can download right in the description. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any of my new body language episodes and tips. See you next time!